I would like to begin by thanking everyone for taking the time to review this session. Today's focus will center on the implementation of guided reading. We will look at how this literacy tool can be utilized across the district and differentiated for multiple grade levels. We will begin with an overview of the latest district report cards and describe what our next steps are as a district. Then we will move into the implementation of guided reading and the expectations across grade levels. The goal is that you can walk away from today's session with a better understanding of where we stand as a district and some action steps to take in your own classroom to begin impacting the reading levels of your students. To begin our session, we will spend some time reviewing the district report cards. Due to the nature of our district, we do not have an overall report card. Instead, we have one from DECA Prep, which, as you know, was K-6 last year, and there's another one for DECA High, which was our 7-12 building last year. This is the last year that the report cards will be this way, as we have transitioned into 3 campuses this year of DECA Prep K-4, DECA Middle 5-8, and DECA High 9-12. Let's begin by breaking down the DECA Prep report card. The first area that we are going to discuss is the overall achievement of DECA Prep. As many of you are aware, our overall scores dropped last year as we received a D in Performance Index and an F in Indicators Met. These drops in scores appear to be due largely in part to low OST scores. The scores for tested grades in ELA are as follows: 3rd grade 34.1%, 4th grade 54.4%, 5th grade 37.5%, and 6th grade 37.8%. This is a drastic difference, as scores for 3rd grade alone were in the 90th percentiles for the past 2 years when the old OAA was used. This data seems to indicate some areas for improvement in regards to OST tested skills. Along with the achievement report, the report card also provides us with an overview of progress. However, due to the nature of our district and its size and population, we do not receive scores for most of these areas. Our score for achievement among the lowest 20% was a D, which placed us below standard. Again, this is a cause for concern, as our goal is to ensure that all students are learning and growing. The data from the K-3 literacy section provides some questions and contradictions, as scores have dropped drastically. The school is doing well in the area of getting and keeping students on track, as reported through reading improvement plans, as less than 10% are not on track at each grade level. However, we only had 34.1% who passed the OST this year. This appears to show a disconnect between the assessments being used to determine on-track abilities and what is being tested on the OST. As we know, the school performed better on reading assessments in the past when OAA was used first OST, as we experienced a 60% drop in scores when the new test was administered last year. Despite a low number of OST passing 3rd graders, we were able to promote 74.1% based off of approved vendor replacement assessments. So, what does all this data mean? Well, the data from the 2015-2016 report card for DECA Prep reveals that the school received an overall D for performance. This is down from previous years where we maintained higher evaluations. As previously discussed, it would appear that these new lower rankings began with the implementation of the new Ohio State tests, as this is the only area that is significantly different from our previous report card findings. There are many areas that received scores of NR and NC, as our school and district are small, with grades K-6 only beginning in the last 5 years. As you know, last year was the first year the district was a fully functioning K-12 district. Among these areas that cannot be tracked are gifted and disabilities. Additionally, we know that the school is comprised of almost 100% economically disadvantaged African American students. Therefore, all of these factors make it difficult to compare different subgroups and try and divide up data findings. The performance indicators and index measures are very alarming as well, as they show definite drops from the previous 2 school year scores of 95.9 and 91.9, compared to this year's 68.2. The report card also appears to show that progress indicators are not being met. Again, it appears that these change drastically with the change in assessments. For instance, if you look at our MAP assessment scores, which have not changed, we continue to see a lot of progress in student scores. Finally, another alarming area is the K-3 literacy portion of the report card. This report seems to contradict itself, as it states that there are less than 10 students not on track in all areas, but there are also less than 10 improving to on track. It also indicates that the growth measures are NC, as they were not calculated. Additionally, 74.1% of 3rd graders met the 3rd grade guarantee requirements, despite the school receiving an F in this portion of the report card. Let's turn our attention to DECA High as we break down the 7-12 report card. We will again begin with a discussion of the overall achievement of DECA High. You will notice that while our performance index score is the same at both DECA Prep and DECA High, receiving Ds, DECA High received a higher score of D for indicators met. This is due largely to the differences of OST scores at the high school level, where every grade level is scoring at or above the state average, and we had 100% passage of the OGT in 11th grade. Again, we see the same trends and no scores provided for most of the progress areas due to the nature of our district and its size and population. Our score for achievement among the lowest 20% was an A, which placed us above standard. This is definitely a strength for the high school. Since DECA High was 712 last year, they did not receive a K-3 literacy score. However, they did receive graduation rate scores. As many of you are well aware, this is definitely a strong suit of DECA's. Being an early college academy, our graduation rates are high with our college graduation rates, although not present on the report card, being around 85%. We received an A for graduation rate with 94% of our students who entered as freshmen graduating in 4 years from DECA. This was above the state average by 11 points. So, once again, what does all of this data mean? Well, the data from the 2015-2016 report card for Dayton Early College Academy reveals that overall the district received a D for performance. This was true for both the K-6 and the 712 campuses. However, the progress rates varied greatly, with the K-6 campus receiving a D while the 712 campus received an A. Like DECA Prep, there are many areas that received scores of NR and NC as our school and district are small, with grades K-6 only beginning in the last 5 years. In fact, last year was the first year the district was a fully functioning K-12 district. Among these areas that cannot be tracked are gifted and disabilities. Additionally, the school is comprised of almost 100% economically disadvantaged African American students, as we all know. All of these factors make it difficult to compare different subgroups and try and divide up data findings. The performance indicators and index measures are alarming as they show a slight drop from the previous 3 recorded years of 99.1, 98.3, and 97.4 compared to this year's 83.5. Interestingly, 2015 is not recorded anywhere on the growth progress charts throughout this report card. Unlike the DECA Prep report, this one shows that progress is not only being met, but exceeded, receiving a 5.97 where only a 2.0 is needed to receive an A. We attribute this difference to the change in state assessments at the younger grades versus the consistency with the OGT in the upper grades. Additionally, the district received an A in the graduation rate department. As we all know, this is one of the selling points for DECA, as we are a college prep school and offer the highest graduation rate and college attendance rate in this area. So, what is the point of sharing all this data today? Well, after sitting down with administration, we have noticed a few trends in the data and have made some recommendations for next steps to improving the district report card scores. The first step is to increase the awareness and understanding that we as a school have with data. We believe that by forming data teams and meeting on a more regular basis than we currently do, we can dissect the data and come up with action plans to use this data to drive instruction. Secondly, we noticed that the biggest trend among our district was that the highest performing students tend to grow the least in relation to their grade level peers. Our superintendent, Mr. Taylor, offered great insight when he said, "Our top performing teachers tend to see greater gains with higher achieving students. While they do well with kids across the board, they are especially strong helping top quartile students grow." Therefore, we have decided to use these teachers to lead this series of PDs entitled Literacy Tools Across Grade Levels in order to capitalize on what they do best to extend all students in their classroom. In addition to this PD series, we will also provide more opportunities for peer observation, mentorships, and administrative observation and feedback. Finally, we are working to grow in our K-3 literacy department. As the report card indicates, this was the area which provided the most significant drop for us as a district. Although we know a lot of this has to do with the new OST assessment changes, this will not be able to serve as an excuse for low report card scores from year to year. Therefore, we again looked to classrooms where the most students succeeded to find what was working best. What we found was that guided reading, balanced literacy, and intense writing programs were being implemented in these classrooms. So, over the course of the next few sessions, we will introduce you to all of these strategies and discuss how they can be differentiated at each grade level to help increase the performance of your students from struggling to accelerated readers. We believe that with some of these changes and steps, DECA has the potential to be a game-changing school, impacting the lives of inner-city, low-income families to continue to produce first-generation college students who will change the future. Now that we have an understanding of where our district stands and we understand why we need to focus on literacy instruction, let's spend some time getting to know the strategy of guided reading. Before we jump in, I want you to take some time to define these three key terms: whole word, decodable text, and leveled text. Use the Frayer models in front of you to quickly jot down a definition of the term, some characteristics of that type of instruction, and then some examples and some non-examples. It is important that you have a good understanding of these terms and how they are different before we begin our discussion of guided reading today. Please pause the video and take time now to complete the Frayer models for these three terms. Now that you've had a chance to brainstorm what you already know about these words, let's jump into some specific definitions. Whole word, decodable text, and leveled text refer to the three predominant types of instruction that have dominated reading instruction throughout history. Whole word is the term given to programs which focus more on meaning making than actually breaking apart words. These programs introduce high-frequency words through a systematic and explicit process. This type of instruction is what is found in basal programs. According to Rogge and Burton, basal programs contain strictly controlled vocabulary that was introduced in a prescribed sequence, often teaching children only a core of sight words rather than working on decoding strategies. Therefore, many have moved away from this method because, as Edinger points out, it 1. does not meet the individual needs of students, and 2. produces artificial teaching as teachers become dependent on the scripted manuals and cookie-cutter curriculum. Like whole word, the vocabulary in decodable text is controlled. However, letter-sound relationships govern the selection of the vocabulary. These books are created based off of the alphabetic principle, making it easy for readers to break apart the sounds to read the words successfully. As a result, meaning is often lost in order to maintain predictable patterns and decodable words. After the creation of the National Reading Panel in 1997, 5 critical areas of instruction were identified as necessary to produce student reading success: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and text comprehension. So, leveled texts were introduced. Leveled text provided a new spin on decodable texts. Rather than simply forming text based off of word decodability, Kontovorky points out that leveled texts take into account multiple criteria, including the structural characteristics of the text, the appearance and placement of print on the page, the use of illustrations, the complexity of concepts and students' familiarity with the topic, the language predictability, and the repetition of words or excerpts. Leveled text really took off with the introduction of the tutoring intervention program Reading Recovery Leveled Literacy Intervention, or LLI, which was created by famed literacy gurus Fontes and Pinnell. Ransfield-Calden points out that this program is based on the idea that in order to construct deep meaning from a text, the student must be able to process it effectively, have sufficient decoding and word recognition, understanding the sentences in larger units so that everything combines to make meaning. Eventually, Fontes and Pinnell adapted the LLI leveling system to be used in general education classrooms. Leveled text and the Fontes and Pinnell leveling system remain at the forefront of reading instruction today. Here at DECA, we believe in moving away from the one-dimensional approaches of the past and moving toward a multifaceted, balanced approach, as we, along with researchers, have realized that there is no single one-size-fits-all approach to reading. This approach is called balanced literacy. According to Bingham and Hall Kenyon, balanced literacy is a philosophical perspective that seeks to combine or balance skill-based and meaning-based instruction in order to ensure positive reading and writing skills in children. Menzies, Madavi, and Lewis add that a balanced literacy program emphasizes phonological awareness, language development, and comprehension embedded in a literature-based approach. Therefore, balanced literacy is based in scaffolded instruction where teachers provide varying degrees of support and instruction to students based on their individual needs. As supporters of balanced literacy, we recognize that we have a dual commitment to first ensure that students are receiving daily instruction in decoding skills and other areas of systematic instruction, and secondly, guarantee students have access to literature experiences allowing them to construct meaning. In order to maintain this dual commitment, educators have developed specific instructional routines that are unique to balanced literacy. You will notice that these are very similar to what we are already implementing through Daily 5. Among these routines are guided reading, shared reading, interactive writing, literacy centers, and independent reading and writing. The goal of these various techniques and routines is to provide differentiated instruction as a means of helping students make literacy gains in skills and meaning making. Therefore, it is agreed that a balanced literacy program is necessary, teaching skills and comprehension to the whole, and then allowing students to read at their own levels independently and in small groups through scaffolded instruction to fully apply comprehension skills. I would like you to take a few moments to think about how you currently use balanced literacy in your classroom. Being a Daily 5 school, there are lots of strategies that you are currently using. Take a moment to jot down any ways that you are currently utilizing balanced literacy in your classroom. As noted by Bingham and Hall Kenyon and Contovorky, there are many aspects and routines that make up the balanced literacy method. Among these routines is the guided reading framework that was first developed for New Zealand schools and made popular in American schools by Irene Fontes and Gay Sue Pinnell. Since its beginnings almost 20 years ago, the program has grown and developed into an essential element of high-quality literacy education in American schools. Guided reading is based off of the ideas of psychologist Lev Vygotsky, who believed that students should be taught within their zone of proximal development. The zone of proximal development, or the ZPD as it is often referred, is the difference between what a child can do independently and what they can do with help. Vygotsky believed that children should receive scaffolded instruction within the ZPD in order to grow and reach new levels. Mesmer summed up the use of the ZPD in guided reading instruction this way. The ZPD emphasizes where a pupil is presently in achievement, with a reading teacher stressing a higher possible achievable objective. Additionally, Fontes and Pinnell recognize that classrooms are diverse and thus differentiated instruction should be utilized to reach all students at their independent reading levels. They feel that this is best accomplished through the small group method, as it allows teachers to closely monitor and support, which ultimately pushes students to the next level. Taking the ideas of the ZPD and differentiation into account, the guided reading method was developed, providing students with strong instructional supports which allow them to extend their learning through reading texts that are at the edge of their ability. That is, they are not too easy and not too hard. Now that we know what guided reading is, let's focus on how it can be implemented within your classroom. Guided reading combines both the systematic methods of skills-based instruction with the experiences of meaning-based instruction. To begin, there is an explicit structure for guided reading lessons, which consist of selection of text, introduction of text, reading the text, discussion of the text, teaching points, and word work. Each of these structures was selected based on research and reading and the goal of guided reading to help students build their reading power to build a network of strategic actions for processing texts. The lesson structure of a guided reading group begins with the selection of text. Selection of text starts with benchmarking and discovering what level a student is working at. Groups are then formed based on students' strengths and needs and reading level. However, these groups must remain flexible and fluid, changing as the needs of students change. Once this has all been decided, the teacher selects a text at the students' instructional levels in order to provide opportunities for learning in an environment that is not too easy and not too hard. Introduction of text provides an opportunity for the teacher to provide meaning to what they are about to read. The teacher introduces vocabulary, learning structure, genre information, and literacy devices that are present within the text and needed for understanding. All the while, the teacher is assessing students' schema to identify what they already know about the topic. Reading the text requires students to read the assigned portions of the text silently and independently. This allows them to have practice reading text at their level. As they are reading, they are applying strategies to prepare for the discussion in which they will make meaning of the text. Once the text has been read, the group discusses the text. During this time, the teacher scaffolds instruction to lead the group to identify themes, ideas, text structures, author's craft, text features, and other aspects in order to make meaning of the text. The teacher serves as a facilitator during this time. Teaching points are presented during the discussion of the text. These are pre-selected skills and strategies that are based on the group's needs and occur naturally within the text. Oftentimes, these teaching points will be an extension of what is being taught in the general mini-lessons or skills the students have worked on previously. Finally, word work is a time for students to work on their context clue abilities and their ability to solve words as they are reading. The teacher pre-selects words based on the text and the student needs. For example, there may be words that all deal with the ed ending, so the teacher may decide this is a good time to introduce this suffix. This is a section that can easily be differentiated to meet the needs of all of the members of the group. As a reminder, the focus of guided reading is on helping the students read increasingly challenging books in a variety of genres over time and across levels of text gradient. The text structure and lesson structure allows the teacher to accomplish this with each individualized reading group. Within the guided reading instructional framework, Fontes and Pinnell identify 12 systems of strategic activities which are utilized to help readers construct meaning within the text, about the text, and beyond the text. The first of these structures is thinking within the text. There are several ways that this can be done. First, solving words. In this strategy, students use a range of strategies to read and understand words. Monitoring and correcting. This is where you check on accuracy and understanding and work to self-correct your errors. Searching for and using information. Students are able to notice and use information sources. Summarizing information in a way that the reader can remember. Students remember important information and carry it forward. Adjusting reading for different purposes and genres. Students take action in purposeful ways to solve problems or fit purpose and genre together. Sustaining fluency. Students read at a good rate with phrasing, pausing, intonation, and stress. All of these strategies are used while a student is reading the text in order to help them better understand what they are reading, how they are reading, and to allow it to make sense. The first of these structures is thinking within the text. There are several ways that this can be done. First, solving words. In this strategy, students use a range of strategies to read and understand words. Monitoring and correcting. This is where you check on accuracy and understanding and work to self-correct your errors. Searching for and using information. Students are able to notice and use information sources. Summarizing information in a way that the reader can remember. Students remember important information and carry it forward. Adjusting reading for different purposes and genres. Students take action in purposeful ways to solve problems or fit purpose and genre together. Sustaining fluency. Students read at a good rate with phrasing, pausing, intonation, and stress. All of these strategies are used while a student is reading the text in order to help them better understand what they are reading, how they are reading, and to allow it to make sense. The final type of strategy is thinking about the text. There are two of these. The first is analyzing. This is where students notice aspects of the writer's craft and text structure. And finally, critiquing. Students think critically about the text. These two strategies are definitely the hardest to attain. These are appropriate for all grade levels. However, they are seen more predominantly in the middle to secondary ranges. Although these strategies are listed separately, they all work together simultaneously to allow the reader to make meaning of what is being read. And as Clay points out, proficient readers often do them unconsciously. Therefore, the goal of the implementation of guided reading is that the reader constructs unique meanings through integrating background knowledge, emotions, attitudes, and expectations with the meaning the writer expresses. It is more than simply reading words correctly and fluently. It is about making meaning and connections. Now that you have been introduced to the different types of strategic action questions, think about the ones that you already use. Also, think about the ones that you maybe don't use so often. I want you to go ahead and make a list of the type of strategic action questions that you are already using in your classroom, and also a list of the ones that you need to make a conscious effort to include. Remember that the goal of the implementation of guided reading is that the reader constructs unique meanings through integrating background knowledge, emotions, attitudes, and expectations with the meaning the writer expresses. Therefore, we use these different types of strategic action questions in order to allow our students to do this. Go ahead and pause the video and take time to reflect on the types of questions that you are already using. Now that we know how to implement guided reading in our classrooms, you may be wondering, how are books selected? In order to make meaning and connections, Fontes and Pinnell, as well as many other reading experts, recognize that students must be able to not only read the words correctly, but they must also be interested in what they are reading. Therefore, there is a twofold method in selecting text for guided reading: leveled reading and choice. Historical accounts tell us that leveled reading can be traced back to books as old as Webster's Blueback Speller and the McGuffey Readers. However, today's leveled texts are more complicated as they take into account language, content, and text format. This formula allows readers to effectively and successfully utilize cueing systems such as semantics, syntax, and letter-sound relationships to make meaning of what they are reading. In order for students to learn to apply reading strategies, they need texts that both support and challenge them. Clay states that many children learning to read will be confused without assistance from some form of a gradient of difficulty in reading books. Therefore, texts are selected which fall within a student's zone of proximal development, meaning they are not too hard and not too easy for them to read. In order to assess a student's reading level, Fontes and Pinnell have developed a systematic leveling system which benchmarks children based not only on their accuracy, but also on their fluency and comprehension. Fontes and Pinnell note that a level is not a score. It stands for a set of behaviors and understandings that you can observe for evidence of, teach for, and reinforce at every level. Therefore, it is important to attend to the continuum of learning when assessing students and deciding on their reading levels. These Fontes and Pinnell benchmarking systems are available to teachers here at DECA and can be checked out from the literacy coaches. Grades K through 3 are already familiar with using these systems. More PD will be provided to these teachers to extend their learning, and introductory PD will be provided to those who are not as familiar with the systems and how to utilize them effectively. Although leveling has an important role in teaching children to read, automaticity is not the only factor in reading. Students need to be able to make connections to what they are reading in order to make meaning of the text. Rogg and Burton believe that restricting students to levels can jeopardize their motivation in selecting books to read. Fontes and Pinnell would agree with this and even point out that they never recommended that the school library or classroom libraries be leveled or that levels be reported to parents. Instead, they believe that children should be taught the real-life skill of selecting books according to their own interest by trying a bit of the book, by noticing the topic or the author. They believe that the leveling is a teacher's tool and not a label for a child. Thus, a child should not be secluded to read only books at one level. Rather, they should be allowed to read books that interest them and serve a purpose. One way in which we promote student choice in book selection is through the I-Pick strategy. The I-Pick strategy follows like this. I select the book and look it over inside and out. P, purpose. The book serves the correct purpose for which I am reading. I, interest. I am interested in the book and I want to read it. C, comprehend. I can comprehend what I am reading and can make meaning from it. K, know. I know most of the words and the text is not too difficult for me. Teaching students this simple strategy provides them with the autonomy and the ability to know how to select books that are a good fit for them without having to tell them this is your level of book and what you should be reading. Guided reading and balanced literacy are still relatively new concepts. As such, they are constantly changing and adapting as new research is made and new strategies are developed. However, it is important that the theoretical framework remain intact. Fontes and Pinnell point out that there are 3 big areas where new learning is occurring and changing in the guided reading world: readers in the reading process, text, and teaching. First, readers have to be explicitly taught how to think and make meaning so that it can become an automatic and unconscious reaction to reading. This is accomplished through the use of reading strategies that teach students to think within the text, about the text, and beyond the text. Secondly, the texts being used have to be reassessed. When selecting a text, it is important that reading level is not the only thing addressed. Instead, teachers need to make sure that they are paying attention to the following characteristics: genre form, test structure, content, theme and idea, language and literary features, sentence complexity, vocabulary, words, illustrations, and book and print features. Each of these aspects is crucial to book selection and overall student success. Thirdly, there is a need for a shift in the way teachers are instructing. They need to continue to move forward toward a scaffolded approach where they are leading children to discover their own learning. In addition to guided reading, other strategies and routines such as literature discussions, interactive read-alouds, independent reading with conferences, and reading mini-lessons can be used to scaffold and differentiate instruction to meet each student at their individual level while still teaching the core skills. We will delve into more of these strategies as we continue this series on using literacy skills across the grade levels. Until teachers make these shifts in the way they introduce the reading process to readers, select books for instruction, and scaffold instruction, they can never truly have a balanced literacy program within their classroom, and students will continue to struggle. As we end our presentation today, I want you to think about everything that you have learned about guided reading. I want you to make a list of the next steps that you could do in order to help implement guided reading in your classroom. List out some ideas of next steps so that you can walk away today with an action plan of how you can roll out guided reading within your own classroom.